we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want it until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
The violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the Insurrection. I'm Michael Lauber. This is Derrick Evans. It's Friday. Trump hasn't even been in office 3 weeks yet, and the world's spinning on a completely different axis. We've got a great show lined up for you guys and a great guest.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Hey, I can't believe so much has already happened in less than 3 weeks' time at this point. It's absolutely mind-blowing. As always, guys, like, share, subscribe. Thank you guys for hanging out with us here today. If you're in the comments, watching live, hop in the comments. We'll do our best to give you a shout-out kind of like this. We got Sean already in the Getter chat. We got Dan Dreyer in the Rumble chat. Dan says he never gets tired of the video prior to us coming on, the intro video. I have to agree, Dan. I like it as well. And then in the X chat, we've got Exos, Kristen, Thaddeus, Pamby already popping off in the chat. We appreciate you guys. We've got an awesome show lined up for you guys. An awesome guest, Paul Stone. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, so great to be here, Mike. Thank you, Derrick. Very excited.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today, and I want to get some of your insight. I was reading through your Substack recently. Of course, you're with Colonial Metals Group, but I think you really hit the nail on the head, especially with this focus on China, because, you know, at this point, I really feel like they're probably the largest global threat to the United States. I don't really buy all this stuff with Russia. I think they're not nearly as dangerous as the media would like to pretend they are, not to us at least. I do think there's an opportunity to mend fences there and have a positive relationship with Russia again. However, China, on the other hand, I don't know that it works like that. You know, they're probably the largest threat. Second is the Islamic Jihad we're seeing across the Middle East. But let me pull this up on the screen here real quick, your recent article here, because you had a great illustration there as well. Oh, let me fix something. Sorry, guys. We're having a quick technical difficulty here. There we go. But the title of the article was The Rise and Next, the Fall of China. And this is a story I don't think gets a lot of attention here, too. In addition to what you had in your article is I don't think people realize how dangerous China is right now and how on the verge they are, too, of a total economic collapse because of the mortgage crisis there, banking crisis. This has been ongoing. You know, we've covered this off and on, but obviously we focus primarily on what's happening directly in the U.S., and there's just been so much to cover, especially for the last month or so, that I don't think we've given this the attention it really deserves.
No, we haven't. And you know, that's where I might be uniquely useful or trying to be helpful to my common American brothers and sisters is to try and illuminate the source of things. It's hard to understand something when we're just staring at the symptoms of something, right? We're looking at how something is causing an irritation or a heartbreak in our lives. We got to go to the source. So when we look at China, when we throw China under the microscope, the first place we want to start at is America versus Europe. So when we look at the story of colonists, you know, Colonial Metals Group, the colonial flag, let's remember where this place, how this place started. When they sailed away from Europe, right, there was nothing here. And so everything that came from America came from the unique, if you thought of that Atlantic Ocean as a filter, right? It's a 2-month, 3-month sailing trip to a land where there's nothing. So only the people in Europe that are willing to make that leap end up in America. So we do have a unique ancestry when we look at what humans would be willing to sail for 2 to 3 months on a wooden ship across the Atlantic to a place no one's ever been before, versus stay at home and rake wheat under the pressure of a monarchy back in Europe. When we look at China, so how did they come up? We came up from the just incredible sheer will of the magic of a human being when all of the shackles come off. That's how America got started. How did China get started? They spent thousands of years sleeping behind a huge wall that you can see from space. Japan kicked their rear end twice, and we made Japan give the land back. So when it comes to China, they were just a sleeping nothing country that made fireworks, cheap toys, and rice forever. So this is the point. So when we first get that and we hold space for both of those different journeys that massive financial and military powers came to the scene, to the stage, you'd say, well, then how did China get started? Oh, well, it was the elected officials in America. Because by the time, the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s certainly come around, you aren't dealing with presidents and elected officials that were once colonists. You're dealing with career people who may not be able to make it in any career outside of standing at a podium and saying some sharp stuff that ends up getting them a job. Right? The only problem that elected officials ever seem to be very good at resolving is reelection, the problem of reelection. So our elected officials are hearing the whispering in their ears, in their offices from Monday through Friday. You and I are out here doing our day jobs. We pull a lever for a candidate every couple years. That's it. That's the only time they really hear from us, right? But they're listening to these corporateers, these financiers that want cheaper labor, that say we can cut costs if we have our factory in China rather than America. And that's where this gets extremely evil, if not just certainly ugly, but evil. Because that means that the force field of the Constitution put in power and made live action by the elected officials was ignored. That force field that protected us here inside of America was turned off. Because 75,000 manufacturing firms have closed their doors since 1990 in this country, and most of those all reopened in China. And that was all made possible by your elected officials, by the people you trusted to represent the dusty old piece of paper called the Constitution. That's where China was born. It was made in America. That's the first thing to understand. So you stop. You look at Trump, like you were saying, incredible moves he's made in 3 weeks. Lots of business people would have made those moves. Probably not with the energy and zeal that Trump has. He has, he encapsulates a very unique set of components to his savvy and understanding of how the world actually works that most don't. But the comparison between him and other politicians is he just sees clearly, and others just see themselves and see how their future is going to be assured by being reelected and doing deals with people more important and more powerful than them, rather than doing deals with us.
Paul, I got 2 questions for you, man. First of all, I love your knowledge on this. The chat's loving this as well. I'll go and give a couple quick shout outs. That's what we do on our show here. I want to give a shout out to Thaddeus, Mountain Oyster, John, Fed Up. And then we got FG and ACU News as well in the other chats. But 2 questions for you that I have, Paul. Number one is this rise of China. How much would you say this is related to America's war on natural energy versus China, who is burning coal and building coal-fired power plants and natural gas, all those things, while we're over here trying to do this solar panel garbage, which makes it more expensive to get energy? And then the second question is, seeing that chart there that you'd put together was really interesting. Would you say that just looking at that and the knowledge and everything that you have, that China does not want to enter into a trade war, a tariff war with the United States of America? What are your thoughts on those 2 things?
Great question. So the first one, if it's about respect for your future ability to do business, if you will. So America, full of corporations, savvy, well-educated people, and we've been here doing this a long time, right? China just got rich about 30 years ago. So China's like a trust fund kid that had just inherited billions, Lear jets, buildings, all over this stuff. It can't manage this wealth. It has no idea, has no memory in its DNA on how to handle, manage, protect, guide a massive fortune, right? So when you look at how they take ownership of what they've got, they disrespect it. They have no vision. Einstein says, and always keep this in your mind, everything you're kind of looking at, if you're mystified by something, certainly if it's coming out of the government or left field, is Einstein said, the mind that creates the problem can't possess the solution. That means lack of vision. You can't foresee your action causing an injury. So you pull the trigger on the action, on the idea, and out comes that injury. So when you look at China disrespecting the environment by just, I mean, they had to shut cars and factories down for 2 weeks before their Olympics a while back, so you could actually see in the city of Beijing. So they don't respect anything because they don't feel like they own it. It was all handed to them. Like when you're a kid, your clothes are all over the floor. You start buying your own clothes, they're hung up and everything's put away neatly, for most people anyway.
Yeah.
So when you look at us, though, we're a finely tuned corporate machine that goes a little hand in glove capitalism with some democracy and trying to make that work. Only the government's what's screwing that up, because they also have no vision. So they don't understand the world of business, and they don't understand us. So they don't understand. Can I cuss on the show occasionally?
Yeah.
They don't understand shit. And
Yeah.
so we're looking, we got people that are saying, hey, we're overheating the planet with all these carbon emissions. And we might be. Check this out. If it weren't for Nixon and his idea to print money, and we can get to that in a second, and I got to jump back to that chart. We had 3.7 billion people on the planet in 1971. Today, we have 8.1 billion people. And global debt from the governments managing all these people is 303 trillion. So governments are horrific at making choices that for us or affect us or guide or change, or they're always running on change. I'd be running on restoration. I think that's what Trump really ran on. He ran on restoring the things we focus on to things that make sense, that things are worthwhile, not change, but restoration. Most of the governments around the world seem to run on change. And the only thing that changes is things get worse, even worse. So when we look at business saying, oh my God, we're going to exterminate the ability for consumers to buy our goods, we have to stop that. You can make a little room for some people having fear about global warming. It might be happening, but what's really causing it is the inability for governments to show restraint, respect for currencies, saying no when a problem comes to their doorstep because we don't have the money to throw at solving that problem. Discipline is the real reason that things are just running amok around the planet. You can't get 4 billion people to come to your planet in 50 years unless there are no limits on money. Because when it comes down to you making $9,000 a year was the average income in 1971, you're watching your pennies. You're saying to, babe, I don't know if we can have another child. We better wait a little while. It's already pretty tight here with 2. You have those conversations, but what seems to have happened around the world is governments followed Nixon's lead on just printing money out of thin air and throwing it at their costs and their bills, is that the whole world has come to disrespect everything. And now the guts of things don't matter. It's the image of things that matter.
Yes.
Now to that chart, if we set up the understanding that China's a trust fund kid and it's addicted to these billions and this wealth and this insanity, and they can't manage it, but they definitely want to hold on to it. As they implode, how desperate could they be? And you'd say, China doesn't want a trade war with us. I don't really think it cares. It makes all of our pharmaceuticals.
Exactly.
It makes everything. We're the ones on the end of a leash. We're the ones on the end of the leash.
That's one thing that COVID definitely exposed was how much of our stuff is made in China and the lack of supply chain here in America. If there's one good thing that came out of COVID, that would be one of the good things is in terms of showing the American people how important it is to reshore these jobs back to America, bring manufacturing back here to home to where it's reliable and we don't have to depend on other countries. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, so this thing with Trump and his tariffs, to me, not a trained economist, not a financial advisor. My crystal ball is still a magic 8-ball. But to me, the tariffs thing is to try and start the message that to the corporate world here in America that says you better start having your stuff made here in America. If it were me, I would be a little bit more, we got to break eggs to make an omelet. So I'd be willing to wreck some stuff, to change some stuff, to restore some stuff. I'd be willing to say, look, how hard is it for that heroin addict when they have to kick heroin? They're a mess for a week or two. There's not much you can do for them but hold their head while they throw up and purge for a few days in a row. So to get off of something that isn't healthy for us, we have to cut it. And I would say, and this isn't well thought through, but this is me theorizing. I'm open to more of a discussion on it for anyone who might know better from me, like from MIT or something like that. But I would say corporations in America have 1 year to cease having a freaking thing made in China.
Yes.
1 year. That's it. And if you aren't making that thing here in America, it doesn't come here. That's what I would do. And then that throws the gauntlet on China if they want to really hit Taiwan and start World War III off within that year, or just kind of figure out another way to be communist. But I can tell you this, the heartbeat of a communist is fear and dread, because that's the seed ground for control. And the heartbeat of America is freedom and smiling and pushing through and overcoming and helping your neighbor get there while you're getting there at the same time. And that's the difference between our two countries at the ground level.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point there too. So I kind of want to touch on something related to this. That we're told that China is still a communist nation, but with a market economy. It doesn't really work that way. They still are a top down. Their government controls what happens. They just have opened up certain market freedoms, primarily for innovators or people at the very bottom end of their economy that own a small business, so they're not totally starved out. It is still a top down. They control everything, and I kind of want to get to another reason that we brought you on today too, because one of the other threats that I see like on the horizon for us right now is Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. They've already reversed policy that they were doing to try to keep things stable under Biden. Now we're raising interest rates back up, which probably should have happened a while ago, but I think this is to set future landmines. And part of why we brought you on is because of Colonial Metals Group. So I'm going to give this up here for our audience real quick, because this is protecting your wealth, especially from inflation. And let me fix the screen here real quick, guys. Sorry, we're having a interesting.
While you're doing that, I just want to bring up a good point here. Dan Dreyer had mentioned that $9,000 per year was a great wage in 1971 because gold was about $32 per ounce back then. So it kind of ties into what we're getting ready to get into right now as well, with the printing of money, the inflation, all that ridiculousness when we got off of the gold standard. So wanted to throw that out there. And then
such a unique place to live. I mean, people need to pay more attention to just how magical this arrangement actually is. No moon, you've never met. You've never sailed on an ocean. You don't live anywhere near a coastline. You'd have 200-300-foot waves as the common norm around the planet without the moon. The moon calms the oceans. That tug, that gravitational tug, keeps our oceans calm and navigable, and we can use them.
Yes.
The gold standard was the moon to our financial system. And when Nixon sent that thing away into far and flung into outer space, the dollar has gone down from being worth 100 cents to 3 cents today in its buying power, and gold has gone up from 35 to 2,900. That's the rub. Government decisions are or choice making is the worst set of choice making you could ever put under a microscope. It leads to nothing but ruin and chaos for us.
Well, I want to get this to our audience as we continue the discussion here. But if you want more information on Colonial Metals, Paul, the services he can provide to help you grow your financial future and protect the value of your money gold as a hedge against inflation, gold and other precious metals, you can go to freegoldguide.com/insurrection, or you can call the number on your screen, 888-727-2143. to connect directly with a representative at Colonial Metals Group. And this will also help benefit Derrick and I here on the show. We talk all the time about putting your money where your mouth is and not spending your money with companies that hate you and are intentionally trying to take down our country brick by brick. There's a good opportunity to do that. But yes, I think inflation especially is one of the most insidious things that we are dealing with now, because it is essentially a backdoor tax. In 4 years of the damage that was done under President Biden, that's going to take a lot more time to undo and to repair. And some of this inflation it's not going to be reversible. They put more dollars out. The Federal Reserve was just running the money printer constantly for 4 years. And that's why we're in the situation we're in now. Whereas if you'd put some of your assets into gold, it would have retained its actual buying power, unlike the decreased buying power we now see with the US dollar.
Yeah. Can I make a point on that though? Just for
sure.
Absolutely. So when Nixon, so when I say the dollar's worth 3 cents, imagine the headlines tomorrow, Saturday morning, are oh my God, the scientists got it wrong, the seismologists, the geologists got it wrong, the oil industry got it wrong. Only 3% of the projected global oil reserves are actually what remains in the ground. 3% of the world's oil. They counted it wrong. There's only 3%. They said there were 200 years of oil in the ground. 3% of that is what remains. 6 years.
Well, it'd be total panic immediately. The cost of a gallon of gas would be
3 cents. The same thing. It's a resource. It's not a resource if you're not printing it. It's just a currency. Gold was really the money. Paper was a better way to carry gold. Correct. So the resource that you're burning, that the government is burning, is an energy that is expended before you start drilling for oil, because the money paid a driller. It paid someone to make pipe, someone to make a boat to get the oil rig out there in the water, or start building the derrick that drills for it on the ground. So everyone has to wake up that ever since Nixon, there's been inflation. But since the turn of this century is where it really got horrific. That's because 60, 70 million baby boomers quit producing in this economy. They took the yoke off their neck that was plowing financial fields for all these 3 or 4 decades, 5 decades, and they moved into little cottages that we have to pay for because we owed it to them, we promised it to them, and give them some spending money and take care of their healthcare costs. Mm-hmm. So debt in the year 2000 was $4 trillion. The dollar was worth 56 cents, like buying power. Today, the dollar is worth 3 cents and debt is 36 trillion. So that's what can't be stopped. Trump has no shot. It's the only thing that could possibly eventually fight against the real death of the dollar if something was done quickly, is to start making stuff in America again. In 1990, 82% of the transactions that went off in this country during the day happened on a product made in America. 82%, 1990. Today, 11%. That's how bad it is. Yeah. So if you don't make anything here and all you do is spend, and you're going to need debt to bring in enough spending to keep the electrical grid turning tomorrow, the resource you're killing to have that fake financial video game world we're living in today is to burn the dollar. And the dollar there's 3% dollars left in the barrel to be exhausted. So you're almost out of time, mathematically speaking. And you're showing there's going to be one.
Just to clarify here, Paul. So since the year 2000, it's obviously 2025 now. So in the last 25 years, we have went from 4 trillion in debt to 36 trillion in debt. That's just what they count. I mean, we know that there's other debt out there as well. Yeah. And at the same time, the purchasing power of the US dollar went from 56 cents to 3 cents, all in a span of 25 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's insane.
Insane. And that, again, when I say China, the United States government built China. They built this massive dick-headed irritant to our lives that we have to hear about and deal with all day long. And they also are destroying your frickin' currency to pay the bills. They don't understand where they're coming from, but they're coming from the retirees. They're coming from no population, no country ever had a 60, 70 million person population bubble roll through its world. Imagine a snake swallowing a volleyball. That population bubble made everything awesome in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and then it left out the other end and became doo-doo.
Yes.
Now, we love all these Americans because they built the country. We want to take care of them. But where the problem came in is the government never saw a way to offset the retirees in the 80s. How do we
Yes.
keep this immigration machine turning and bring great people here to offset the 60 million that are going to go on the cost side of the ledger that used to be on the production side? They said, well, you know, we're actually cowards here, us elected officials. And the only thing we want to tell the people is good news so we get reelected. Boom. There you go. Here
Yeah.
you are. Welcome to 2025.
Yeah, and now we're at a point where we've hit this wall with especially Social Security, where, you know, I saw from a Doge that they moved the retirement age up just to five years to 75. That alone would account for $1 trillion in saving per year in our obligations. But you're right, like promises were made to these people, but we're in such a bad position now where so little is produced in the U.S. that you just constantly have our wealth leaving the nation and going to adversarial nations. It's not even it's not even that's going to our allies. It's that the bulk of this is now going to China because we're addicted to cheap goods, and now we're basically a service-based economy, except for, you know, the 11% of goods that are actually produced here, and it is not going to be an easy process to turn some of that around.
No, you'd have to make draconian cuts. That's why I said maybe something like you give corporations in America 1 year to no longer have anything. And I mean, anything made anywhere. You're going to go from China to Malaysia to Vietnam. No, nothing outside of this country, unless it's a very short list of pre-approved countries that we're willing to deal with, that we want to support, that are good-hearted countries, right? That are allies. Yeah, let's have a little manufacturing, you know, assistance there, but not in any country we don't trust.
South American, we're like some of the South American countries, you know, like we can't produce enough bananas here in America to meet that demand because of the weather and the climate. So obviously we're going to have to import those things from those countries. That obviously makes sense. I got a question, an audience question here for you, Paul. It says, this is from ACU News in the Rumble chat, wants to know, what does Paul think is the difference between investing in Bitcoin versus precious metal?
Oh, the simplest, you know, distinction that I can make is gold and silver is at my hip. It's in a depository if I have a good amount of money saved and I just don't want that much money on my hip. It exists in the physical world and it can't be hacked. And Bitcoin to me, like, you know, my wife and I set up a little account many years ago for her. Can't remember we had to create a unique email or a new email address for. We can't remember the email address or the password, and there's no one to call with Coinbase. There's no one to call. So if my Bitcoin gets hacked, who do I call? You know, at least right now, if my bank account has some fraud on it, they put the money back. There's someone to call and they fix it for me. But I don't like at all the world moving off to an even more less controllable, less predictable, less possessible currency. You know, I know it's headed that direction. I think it's folly. I think anything, and even when Trump comes to Washington and he might hear some ideas that are antithetical to actual living, he might go with those and support those because we all fall prey to, you know, that big fanfare that can come if we agree with someone's idea. There's good feelings of inclusion and all that. That's all normal. But a Bitcoin wealth strategy reserve is just ludicrous to me. If it, you know, you're never going to want to print chicken dinner. So when you're dealing with the artificial, if I handed you some protein goop in a 3D printer and you're printing your chicken dinner for the night, you're not going to like how that goes. You're going to get sick of it. Real is real. Artificial is artificial. And to me, it's obviously been a lot of news going off about cryptocurrencies, a lot of excitement, a lot of wealth and seems to have been created from that. But what is it actually used for? And I know you could say, well, we don't go shopping with gold and silver at Walmart. You don't go shopping at Walmart with stock in Walmart. I can't guard my home with stock in Smith & Wesson. So have both, but that's the difference to me. Gold and silver is real. It's truly limited. It's truly finite. And you tell me, oh, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. Someone can write code, so there's 42 million Bitcoin and 84 million Bitcoin. I just don't trust if man made it, it isn't an actual physical law, right? Mother Nature's laws don't need to be written down anywhere.
Oh, and my other big concern with Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is regulation. We already saw a number of years ago attempts from the feds to, basically regulate it out of existence. And they don't want the competition. And who's to say, after Trump's out of office, just because he's bullish on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, that we don't end up with somebody else that sees that, this is a lever that they can assume control of. They can extract a lot of wealth from the American people and others by outlawing it, or making it impossible to deal with, levying huge taxes or fees or other things on transactions. So that's my other concern with a digital asset as opposed to something physical like gold, silver, platinum, palladium, whatever you want to, create your stockpile with.
Yeah. And let's just look at that government thing. So let's go back to where we started. The government's listening to who all day from Monday to Friday? The lobbyists, the profiteers, corporateers, the financiers, right? The people who want to enlarge their wealth somehow. They're not listening to us Monday through Friday. They listen to us when we pulled the lever, because we were listening to them, and we had lots of times two crappy choices. Thank God we had one insane, awesome choice this time, and obviously a very ridiculous choice.
Yes.
And the country chose to fight. Because in the DNA of a human, especially in America, it's about victory. It's about winning. It's about success. It's about overcoming. It isn't about victimhood and pronouns and futility. It isn't about loserdom. Those aren't that Atlantic Ocean was that filter that brought the extraordinary folks out of Europe and settled here. So here in America, that crap isn't going to play very long, and hopefully it never plays again after the 4 years we get here with Trump. Yeah. But when we look at what does the government do, if it has an idea, it's probably wrong. So if they're coming out saying, we're going to legislate and regulate cryptocurrency into nothingness, who might be whispering in their ear that maybe they needed a little more time to get their systems ready so that they could adopt and promote the living hell out of Bitcoin in their realm? The financial world? Was the financial world ready 3 years ago to have a Bitcoin mutual fund or ETF? Was the financial world ready back then to have it to shift from dollar-based generated wealth to a crypto generated wealth? I don't think they were, because they didn't embrace it. The financial world didn't embrace crypto 3, 4, 5 years ago. They fought against it. They said it'll be nothing. Don't forget. Well, what wags Washington is the money. That's what wags Washington, not our votes.
Well, so and I mean, at the end of the day,
crypto.
Precious metals have been around for thousands, millions of years, used in this form, and so that is literally what our country was built on as well. So I think for me, it's tried and true. Yeah. I believe that it's possible to make it's Bitcoin, and maybe not Bitcoin as much now, but most cryptos is probably more of a gamble. Like, you could probably make a lot of money if you can understand how to liquefy that in a short amount of time. But for me, if you're looking for long-term investment, not only from an investing standpoint, but also from a practical prepping standpoint, like an economic collapse of some sort, the precious metals is what is everyone is going to fall back on when that happens. When the dollar collapses, how much is Bitcoin really worth at that moment? Because what is it backed by at that point if the dollar collapses? Whereas silver and gold and even copper and all these other things have been used for thousands and thousands of years as a form of currency, and it would continue to be accepted. So that, to me, is where I kind of look at the difference between the two.
Yeah, one other difference, if we just another second here, is so when you look at the arrangement between demand for something, got to have it. Usually there has to be something that facilitates the demand, right? So if I say, well, I want, groceries, and the dollar's dead, if the grid is down, if the governments have seized control of cryptocurrency because it lives in their financial world, it lives electronically, you may not have you could be starving to death, which is your demand for groceries, but you don't have the means to facilitate the acquisition of the groceries.
Yes.
How can you hack gold and silver? How can you, if let's say the world melted down, the grid is gone, and the government, if there still is one, they pass a law outlawing gold and silver. Like, who cares? Like, who's going to go enforce that? Who's going to enforce that? No one, because we're all like, the grid is down. So I can never be, and if I just sell my gold and silver for some money, that is then how I facilitate buying the groceries. Gold and silver in a crisis usually are up, a very, very strong percentage during a crisis. During the last crisis, you're talking 300% if you had a mixture of gold and silver. And it could have been a lot higher if the money printing in our country wasn't able to come in and put a little bit of an end to the pain or feeling the pain of 2008. GDP since 2008 without any printed money is a negative number, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So we technically have been living in a depression since 2008. Unemployment counted the old-fashioned way is 26.7%.
Yep.
That's true unemployment. True. These days, it's a podium number. It has been since the 80s. Inflation is truly around 9% right now. And it's been averaging 8% since the year 2000. But the podium number the Fed likes to use, and every president has used since then, is it's a lot lower. They're reporting a number a lot lower. So you hear, they beat it. They got control of inflation. No, they haven't.
Yeah, the most laughable was the last administration, the illegitimate Biden regime. And, they were trying to the inflation was such a high number. It was so impactful that no one, not even the people who supported Joe Biden or hate Donald Trump, because I don't know if anybody actually supports Joe Biden, but even the people who hated Donald Trump, like even they knew that they were being lied to about the inflation, because they're saying, inflation's 3% or whatever. Well, the price of groceries was through the roof, rent was through the roof, insurance, you name it. People knew better, and their wages never increased. So like people knew the truth. I gotta clear some chats really quick. We got Dottie in the Getter chat. We've got over here, we got Brad from West Virginia in the Ex-American News chat saying we need to go back to the gold standard. Bullets and gold is the way to go. Then we got Thaddeus. Thaddeus over here is saying that precious metals is the way to go as well. So appreciate all you guys. I know I missed a ton of people, but those are the two I wanted to highlight on this since it's related to what we're talking about.
Yeah, and real quick, if I could, when the government changes the metric and how they're capturing it, and that's how you end up with these false inflation numbers instead of capturing what the real spend is on basic household items, whether that's gasoline, groceries, cost of rent, and all that. When they're changing the metrics to hide the real data, that's what we've seen over the last, like you said, since the 1980s. It doesn't capture the real change, the real inflation, the real loss in buying power from the U.S. dollar. Now, I know you've got a limited time that you've got to run off. You've got other things to do today, other people to enlighten and inform. Are there any last pearls of wisdom that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Just that, just ending the thing on gold and silver for a minute it's just a bridge. It's a bridge over a chasm. So you'd say to yourself, well, how close are we going to get close to a cliff? Are there cliffs? Well, there's been 10 recessions in our nation's history since World War II. 08 was the 10th. And the fallout or consequences, it seems, from each recession is a hell of a lot worse than the one we just went through. So 08 was a lot worse than 2000. 2000 was a lot worse than 91. So as we've entered into this money printed artificial financial world, this video game, if you will,
pretty much,
fallout, the breakdowns, the deaths are a hell of a lot more painful in this upcoming recession if we're following that trajectory. So gold and silver, I don't really look at it as an investment, but it's a location for money that is no longer in harm's way, the harm that we are sure to know about. So that's anything around the dollar. If they're killing the resource that your wealth is in, right, to be able to power the grid tomorrow, eventually that resource is exhausted, and then all the zeros and commas in your wealth is also exhausted. That's just math speaking. And math is the only language that cannot lie. It can't lie. It's literally impossible for math to lie to you. You can lie about the math, but the math can't lie. So when you're just looking at that, you'd say, well, what is gold and silver then? I've relocated my at-risk savings to an element that can't be made in a lab, the government doesn't care about. I'm cheering all those people that are saying, let's go back to the gold standard. We'll probably end up there on the other side of a horrific global bankruptcy where your insurrection will actually happen. And you may not even need to fire a bullet to make it so, because when the government goes bankrupt, they're all wondering what to eat. So no one's at the government, right? So they're not lording over us anymore. And the states get their power back, and you have 50 presidents in this country instead of just one. You have 50 governors. So I just want to say it's a bridge over this chasm. If the dollar's worth 3 cents, you're very close to the cliff's edge, mathematically speaking.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like if anything, I'm surprised we haven't gotten even closer to that cliff's edge in the last few years. But again, let me pull this back up on the screen because I do want to encourage our audience to, at the very least, reach out for some information, because it is important to protect the value that you've worked for your whole life, whether you're investing in the future or you're just looking for a small amount of precious metal as a hedge against inflation, something to have on hand if there is an emergency. Either way, Colonial Metal Group can help you out, and you can help us out. Help us stay on air, bringing you the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. Just you can call 888-727-2143, or you can go to freegoldguide.com/insurrection for more information. Again, Paul, I want to thank you for joining us here today. We're definitely going to have you back because this conversation has been very enlightening on a couple different levels, and I really want to have time to dig into some of these issues a little deeper. To our audience, we do have to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to be right back with even more.
Have a new product or idea, whether it's already in production or just a concept. Whether you're an individual, a small business, or a medium-sized company, our upcoming show on Patriot TV is here to showcase it to millions and launch it in a big way. We're looking for businesses like yours to feature your product on our new show and pitch it to over 6 million followers, eager to support like-minded businesses. Whether it's a single product or a new product line, we have a platform to skyrocket sales. With powerful Patriot TV ads, targeted direct mail, and the influence of our dynamic show hosts, your product will get the attention it deserves. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Email us now at advertise@patriot.tv to secure your spot and watch your sales take off.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
You know, if I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's showing up more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
Thank you for staying with us. And again, the best way to support our program and all the programs on Patriot TV is by supporting our sponsors. You can do that by going to patriot.tv, selecting the Insurrection, and then finding a sponsor that you'd like to back to help keep us on the air, bringing you the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. I think we're going to get into some other current events and stories now. And it'd be great to get your reaction to some of these as well, especially as we continue to cover all the grifting over at USAID. Here we go. Clinton Inc. grifting. Hillary hit for obscene grifting, USAID. Now, so far, and I don't think we've gotten completely to the bottom of it yet, we have Clinton Inc. through their foundation, mostly in relation to spending in Haiti, caught pilfering USAID for $4.4 billion, and another $84 million went to her daughter. That 4.4, that is a billion with a B.
Yeah. You know, I'll quickly say, we always wonder how these people go into office as somewhat normal bank accounts, and then they leave multi-millionaires on a salary of $174,000 a year. We know that they're insider stock trading, all of that. But I believe that the insider stock trading is just like the facade. Look over here while they're doing this. I believe that we've uncovered how they're self-enriching themselves this entire time, which is through the USA. This is despicable. If we do not completely abolish U.S. aid, I don't believe there's any hope for any sort of serious changes in the future of this country. For me personally, this is a fork in the road. we better abolish U.S. aid and end this madness right now, immediately.
Anything you'd like to add in on this?
Yeah, I would agree. When we hear these issues, these horrific issues, like we heard about, the earthquake that hit Haiti, right? Didn't a ton of money run through Clinton's foundation to help support them, and not all the money, or maybe only half the money, hit the ground there in Haiti a long time ago? When we hear the examples or these times where people are behaving badly and they were elected officials, it just supports my argument that we need to watch out for how these distract us from living our lives fully. Yes. We have to ask ourselves a question: can we actually throw down and quit this machine from behaving this way, destroying our currency, creating debt, lying to us, supporting things that are evil and against us, hurting our way of life, making it impossible to pursue happiness here in the land? America's not even in the top 20 of the happiest countries on the planet. And I could even think of maybe 7 or 8, I don't know, I'm guessing, countries I might want to live in. So we're not even in the top 20. Like, could you guess at the countries that come before us? I mean, after a few, I'd guess at, I'd be out of options. I might get 3 or 4 right. So we have to recognize that the real way to make America great again is in our control. It's living where our feet are. It's making sure we're gracious to those around us, that we're setting the example. When someone cuts us off in traffic, we wish them a great day, because we're not going to sink to the character they are to inconvenience or scare the living shit out of others with a family of 4 in a minivan at how they're driving. We're going to be glad we aren't them. Yeah. Those changes we make inside of our lives individually, 350 million of us, and that will restore this country to being the most powerful, happy place on earth again. It isn't just going to come from legislature. And you'd have to ask yourself, how do you get rid of people like the Clintons? How do you keep them from slipping into power? And there doesn't seem to be a way to be able to do that. There's no mechanism to stop them from doing that. We have to be the ones that are living differently, that they would, when they go to say to the money, hey, will you back our campaign? Here's what we're all about. The money won't back them. Say, you will never make it here in this country. They don't want anything you're bringing to the table. They don't want to hear from you. They don't want you representing them. This is a country of strength and individual power.
Yeah, well, I think you're right that a big part of it is changing the culture. So people like the Clintons and others that have turned our federal government into their personal piggy bank, that the people care enough that they can never win another election ever again. That you're getting beyond just the parties. You're not just voting for somebody because they have an R or a D behind their name. That we're actually looking into who these people are and not allowing these people that use our wealth at the federal level to enrich themselves, enrich their families, and coalesce power to where they're essentially seem to be untouchable. Now, hopefully this has woken enough people up. It doesn't just stop with Murder Inc., the Clinton family, the Clinton crime syndicate. Catholic Relief Services prepares for massive cuts to refugee program as USAID funding dries up. And again, this is, as we're digging into this, we're uncovering more and more. We're seeing this was the mechanism that was used not just to funnel illegal aliens, invaders throughout the country, but Catholic Relief Services and Catholic Charities. A lot of what their operation was doing is moving people up through South America to our border, where then ICE was basically Uber for illegal aliens, would move them out to one of these different shelters that were also managed by these companies. And we were paying through USAID and other organizations. We were funneling billions and billions and billions of dollars to these groups to essentially destroy our country.
Yep.
And dude, the fact that bishop lady took $50-something million of our tax dollars to aid and abet foreign invaders of our country is unbelievable. And that happened through U.S. aid as well. Then at the same time, you have the U.S. aid giving millions and millions of dollars to these left-wing Politico, those sorts of things, these left-wing media corporations, if you will, to turn around and spread that messaging to combat anybody who was going against it. So they give this bishop $50-some million, and then they turn around and are paying these media outlets millions of dollars to report on what a great job this bishop is doing. I mean, it's a never-ending cycle of our money being used against us. This is possibly the greatest scandal that we've discovered in decades at this point. I mean, it's unbelievable. And you got to think, we're only 3 weeks in. They just really discovered USAID this week. We're just scratching the surface. We've only peeled back one layer or so of this total mess that we are about to uncover.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And let's just also remember that $1 billion is still a big number. I know we use the word trillion so often this day. Billion seems like the next million.
Yeah.
But 1 billion seconds is 31 years. I mean, that's a big number. So 4 billion here. And we go, it's peanuts these days because we're hearing about, Elon Musk being worth $500 billion or companies being worth a couple $1 trillion, or our debt is 36 trillion. A trillion seconds is 31,000 years. So if you think of our debt in the terms of time, which humans, everything is human scale here on Earth that we interact with, right? We don't build cars where we sit next to each other and then each lane is 30 feet wide. We build cars so people sit behind each other so we don't have to spend so much energy building a highway. We can make the lanes more narrow. So everything is to human scale. We don't have doorways that are 9 feet tall. So we can fit in 10-foot couches, right? Couches are about 7 feet long because they'll fit in a doorway that's about 7 feet high. We don't make refrigerators that are too. That's the one reason people struggle to own pianos, because you kind of have to build the house around the freaking piano.
Yes.
So when we look at scale, the government, U.S. government has created over 1 million years of debt. We've been around 300 years, whatever. Something,
wow.
Some years, give my math. But 1 million years of debt in 24 years.
No, it's insane.
When we look again at the issue, it is Washington. Reagan said it, right? Reagan said it. He said the government solutions are worse than their problems. Let all of these hellish news items cause you individually to look at how maybe you've been swept into thinking the government's going to hand you back the rights to pursue happiness in this country. In Europe, we had to leave. We had to leave the monarchies where we would just be raking wheat for a living. Our kids would rake wheat, and those kids would rake wheat for a living. There was no upward mobility. We had to sail away. There's nowhere to sail to today unless you want to take over Canada, right? So you've got to make this personal choice for yourself. Yes, it's miserable to see the ineptitude and the evil that comes out of Washington, which was just a city heralded for something that had never been accomplished on the earth before. But that's not what it represents today. You have to represent Washington as a spirit inside yourself. And that's the personal insurrection we can all make today, all day long, choosing how we function around this stew of shit that is caused by Washington.
Yeah, well, that's really where things are going to be going next is people, and I do think people are starting to become inspired to take back the nation, especially as we're starting to see these victories. I think we had 4 years where people really felt like the boot of the government was on their neck. They were afraid to speak up. But I think people learned a lot during that time, and now they are willing to stand up and say what's right. And we're seeing more and more people become courageous, especially as the evils in Washington, D.C. become more and more exposed. And, it isn't just USAID. Actually, I guess we have one more slide there, so we'll bring this up and then go past that. USAID accused of funneling $260 million to organizations linked to George Soros's Open Society Foundations. And this is another group that's done immense harm to the American people, as we've seen these corrupt prosecutors fanned out throughout the country with catch and release for violent criminals, and instead focusing on putting their attention to minor crimes that largely don't exist, but then letting criminals right back out on the street, putting policies in place for no bail, or California now you can steal $1,000 worth of stuff almost, as long as it doesn't cross to 1,000, and there's no repercussions. People wonder why things have gone downhill so much, but and it is our own tax dollars paying for our demise. But this is ending now. And again, this should alert more people out there to do something, to start fighting for change, to end these type of policies, go back to something that does make sense, and then restores our values and our ideals as the American people here. Because you're right, our ancestors had an escape plan. They could go to the new world, start a new life. We don't have that now. Our escape plan, I guess, is maybe whenever Elon gets transportation to the Mars. But right now, we're out of land here to go to, unless we want to, band together and maybe overthrow some tin-pot third world dictator and then create Freedomistan.
Yeah, right.
I'll quickly say, when it comes to George Soros, I can sum it up very easy. This guy needs to have his U.S. citizenship revoked. He needs to be all of his money taken from him, and he needs to be deported. This man is a criminal. He has destroyed this country. He hates this country. And as far as I'm concerned, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib can be on the plane beside of him getting deported out of this country because they hate our country. They do not represent this country. The fact that Ilhan Omar is openly saying that she represents Somalia as a member of Congress, how the hell is she still in Congress right now? She needs to be kicked out of Congress at the very least, and quite frankly needs to be deported out of our country back to Somalia where she wants to be.
Yep. I agree. The freedom of speech protects ideas because lots of times it's a crazy idea that might lead to the great idea that we end up going with, right? So we got to have a freedom of expression in this country, but you should not, especially if you're an elected official, because you're in office, like, a lawyer's an officer of the court. They're bound to represent and never veer away from the bylaws and guidelines that they have to adhere to for the integrity of the court system to actually function and be trusted by the people that count on it. Why can't that same ethic be applied to members of Congress or anyone who's an official in the government, state government or federal government? Why do they get a pass? It's not freedom of speech to say you represent. I'll never forget that Judge she died. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that the South African Constitution is way better than ours or some country. I mean, look, man, I mean, I'm a diehard Redskins fan, now a Commanders fan. And I went through a very tough period wanting to root for them ever since Dan Snyder owned the team. Now there's a new owner, right? How do I betray my team just because there's one that's winning temporarily more often than my old team did? So you got to look at loyalty. Loyalty has to be an ethic in Washington. And if you don't have it, get out, or there's got to be a way to remove them. There's got to be a way to say, this is America. If you don't like it, go live somewhere else. But don't make our country a shit country like the countries you'd rather go live in.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, we are out of time this time. For real this time, any last pearls of wisdom you'd like to leave our audience with?
No, you guys are running a great show. I love the title. Your spirit is incredible. I love how much you know and how fast you can call things forward. And I love, you're trying to help common Americans hear truth and find inspiration in this world that has been struggling for a very long time. And hopefully there's a little bit of an end to that, or the load lessens, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you.
God bless you. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we want to do, is inspire our audience to fight back, because if we don't retake this country, nobody's going to do it for us. So guys, one last time, I want to strongly encourage you all to go to freegoldguide.com/insurrection, or if you're more comfortable, give them a call at 888-727-2143. That will not only help secure your financial future, help you to make better investments, but it also help us to stay on the air so we can continue to bring you the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. All right, guys. The weekend is upon us, but I want to thank you again for joining us this week. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear, and we'll be back on Monday with even more.